Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm your host Terry, coming to you from Coachella, California. I haven't really seen any famous people or any van, tour buses or anything, but I'm sure they're around here because I think this is when they hold that music festival, late July. So my dash says it's 122 degrees here at the Loves in Coachella. That's an exaggeration. It's probably, I think it's only like 106. So yeah, we're doing good. I think it's going to be $115 today, maybe, according to the forecast. I think at some point it doesn't even matter. Like, I was talking to my wife about I read this lengthy, I guess blog, but also it was like a scientific paper a little bit by some meteorologists, and these guys both study the desert climate. And there's the record, okay, so the world record for hottest was 136 degree temperature over in Libya. That was, and that was like in the, I want to say like the 1920s. But that record has been basically erased. People that have studied the methodology, and there is, you can't, there's certain ways you got to take the temperature for it to be accurate. And it's not, it's a standardization thing, right? But one of the things, but this piece was about the record temperature in Death Valley, California, that happened, I think, in the teens, 19 teens, that was like 134 degrees. These two scientists, these two, experienced guys, they make a pretty compelling case that record is also bogus. And they're not saying that the people that took the temperatures were cooking the books, no pun intended, but just that the methodology was incorrect. And they discussed a lot of stuff that I just could not understand, without taking a college class in it or something. But essentially they said that the air temperatures around 8,000 meters above, 8 to 16,000 meters above the ground really drive the highest possible surface temperatures. And they also look at different temperature stations, and they make a compelling case that 134 is not an accurate world's hottest temperature. Now, they suggest that Death Valley getting up to like 129, 130 is not uncommon. It does happen, and those readings are accurate. And after reading all this and kind of enjoying the little debate that was going on, I said, and as I was talking to my wife, I said, at that level, right, does it really matter? Like, would somebody walk outside on a day when it's 130 and be like, yesterday it was only 125 and it was so nice. It's like cold, right? Like, what's the difference between like minus 34 and like minus 39? I mean, yeah, the answer is 5 degrees colder, but let's be candid. We're just not that sensitive to temperature. At those extremes, a few degrees either way. So anyway, we're gonna probably go in and take showers in a little bit, and I might not even dry off. I might just put my clothes on completely wet and just try to get back out to the truck without breaking into a sweat. So today's the 28th of July. Born on this day, First Lady Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy. Jackie Kennedy was born on this day. She passed away at only the age of 64. That was kind of tragic in and of itself. I mean, I think she passed away from cancer. Anyway, she was born on this day. On this day in 1914, first day of World War I. On this day in, I think, 2005, Sinn Féin, which is the political arm of the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, basically said, permanent ceasefire. We're going to end the troubles in Northern Ireland. And speaking of Ireland, Sinead O'Connor died the other day. She was only 56, again, far too young. And, I don't really care what people think of her. I was never a huge fan of hers. I mean, I certainly know her, hits, they were on MTV and stuff. But, when she was on the, on Saturday Night Live, and when she ripped up a picture of the Pope, it was in protest of all of the sex crimes against children that priests had committed in the Catholic Church. And it was a very courageous thing to do. And you know what? She was right. She was right about it all. So, you might not like her politics, or, you might not like anything about her, but she was right. And she stood up, and she forfeited a career that she kind of didn't want. She really wasn't into fame, but I think she was an important artist. And if you're listening to some of the stuff that people are saying about her, tributes to her, you could tell that she had an impact on people that had way more commercial success and cared way more about commercial success. So, I think history will judge her kindly. What else happened today? I think that's about it. Oh, something else I did want to mention, though. This doesn't have to do with today. But if you're interested, because I talk about the Civil War a lot of times, if you're interested in finding out if you have any relatives in the Civil War that were like listed as soldiers, and what units they were listed in and what states they were from, on the National Park Site's website, so nps.gov, there's basically a soldier finder portion of that website, and I think you can just search in nps.gov soldier finder. You could put in just a last name, and it'll give you everybody that was known to have fought in the Civil War that was a soldier of any kind, from any state, including the Confederacy, border states, all states. Their information will be there now, and sometimes they cross-reference it with like different spellings of last names, because a lot of times there were people that had come on the boat like 10 years before the Civil War, and what their name was in the old country, they maybe changed it up a little bit to Americanize it or Anglicanize it. But that's an interesting site to visit. The other thing I did is, if you're really interested in reading about almost like the day-to-day life of Civil War soldiers and Civil War units, most states that had troops in the war, they actually have better archives than like the National Archives, because a lot of those state archives, and I just happened to be looking at New York's one day, they have newspaper articles. Because what would happen is, back in the day, back during the Civil War, a lot of small towns had like a little newspaper, and counties had newspapers. And what would happen is, like, some officer typically would write to the town newspaper about the unit. and he would share news from the front, basically, or news from the camp. And that, what that did is it was a good way to get that information out to everybody, because then the newspaper would print these letters, and it's really insightful. And you know, the thing is, it's like first person, right? It's like the guy writing it was there at the time. It's contemporaneous. It's not it's not something that somebody wrote down a few years later. So it's a great just to read it. You can kind of just tell what was on their minds, and you know, they're very candid about like people getting wounded, and you know, a lot of times when somebody got wounded, they would just leave their unit, and their families would have to like track them down, because these were, vast majority were volunteers. I did happen to find out that a lot of people with my dad's my last name, and then also like my grandmother's last name, a lot of them were actually regular Army. They were in the U.S. infantry, or the U.S. cavalry, or the U.S. battery, which would be artillery. But yeah, check it out. It's kind of interesting. And if you got nothing to do on a 10-hour break, you could definitely get lost in there looking up names of your grandmother's maiden name, your great grandmother's maiden name, if you know all that. It's kind of like genealogy, but it's also, you know, history, which I guess genealogy is family history, right? So anyway, I want to talk about a couple of things. You know, I had this load that I dropped in Los Angeles and in Vernon. I had 2-stop load, and then they offered me a load going up the West Coast, but it was like 4 stops, 3 in California, and I really kind of wanted to get back to the East Coast. So I declined that load. It paid okay, but I was looking at my statements for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just not bringing home that much. But I realized that part of it is just, sometimes it's just luck. It's like where you are and how quickly you get turned around, right? But so what I realized is that a lot of the loads lately, and I kind of knew this, a lot of the loads lately that I've been hauling have been, you know, what I call bang bang loads, like a bang bang play in baseball. Like I really had to hustle, and I know that's not exactly what bang bang means in baseball. It means a close play. But a lot of these loads, either because they were just tight to begin with, or because like the load I brought out of Nebraska coming out here, it was a drop and hook, but I wasn't able to pick it up until I was outside past my deadline window, you know, my backside window time. I wasn't able to pick that up until like 4.5 hours past my deadline. So then coming out here to California, even though I did pick up a couple of hours, I still had to hustle, because, you know, like I knew that I needed to deliver at 7 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles. Like I'm talking right, not technically downtown, but like 5 blocks from Skid Row, busy area. So I was like, I want to be coming over Cajon Pass, or Cajon Summit at 0400. So I had to hustle to make, so my last day, my delivery day, I was getting where I needed to be. I was pretty close to that target, and it turned out that traffic was fine. It was insane. It was chaotic and insane. Like going down, if you've never had the experience of going down off a Cajon Summit at like in the early rush hour, which is like anytime after 4 a.m. people start heading for work around Cali, around Southern Cal. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like, I don't know, it's like an asteroid shower, you know, it just cars just like whipping by you and you're trying to pay attention to everything. But anyway, I got down there. I got there early, which was cool because I made a couple of wrong turns. not just because I made a couple of wrong turns because my nav actually didn't update quick enough that I could make like some turns I needed to. But anyway, I got there. People were nice. They got me in and out quickly. And then on the second stop, I was able to get in and out way earlier than I had for my appointment. Because I called them. They were only 2.5 miles away. I called them like, hey, could I come early? And they're like, yeah, just come. We'll get you in as soon as we can. And so they did. It was cool. And then we just kind of like went and hung out. I went over to my wife's uncle's house. We did a little California thing. We went to In-N-Out. Oh, by the way, check out this truck. I mean, that's the job I want, right? Driving around the In-N-Out semi. I think it's just a giant, like, In-N-Out restaurant on wheels, because it had, like, the doors on the side like you would have for a food truck, but it was, and then it had, like, it was a semi, but it had, like, a crew cab, no sleeper, but just, like, 4 doors on the front. I was like, I need that job. And legitimately, when we were in there eating, I went up to the counter. I was like, hey, how do I get that job driving that truck out front? And the girl, they're so earnest, these kids. She was like, I don't know. Let me find out. I'll get him. And she started asking this young man, and he's like, oh, that I can't do that for you, sir. But I'll get a manager. I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's kind of cool. So. We went to Mr. Donut. The Donut Man. Yeah, I always say it wrong. Brittany's correcting me. The Donut Man in Glendora, California. Love that place. I had this apple fritter that was about the size of a landmine, and Brittany got the strawberry donut, which is more like it's like a pint of strawberries inside of a donut that she mostly ate with a fork. And then what else do we do? Oh yeah, we went to Del Taco. So that's like the California trifecta right there. But anyway, and I had a load that I was supposed to pick up yesterday afternoon coming out of Colton, the Walmart stuff, and it was going to Walmart up in North Platte. That load got canceled, so hoping I get some Tanu on that, because then we got a load that we're actually deadheading over to Arizona to pick up. This load will be fine, but I had trouble getting my empty back. I had an empty set aside, but I had trouble. I couldn't get it back. They had buried it so deep at that Fontana drop yard that I couldn't get it. And so then when I tried to take a different trailer, dispatch was like, yeah, you can take that trailer. And then I get to the gate and they won't let me out. They're like, no, that trailer's supposed to be fixed. So that was a whole kind of debacle. But I did get an empty trailer. We're gonna leave. So and I pushed, my pickup got pushed back because of that trailer debacle. But we pick up tomorrow at 04, which is actually way better, because my original pickup was going to be 1400 today in Tolleson, Arizona, and it's only going to be like 180 degrees in Phoenix today. So I wanted to drive over at night just so it was cooler out while I'm transiting the desert. But now I can leave Coachella about 2300 tonight, get over there, 04 on load. It's a -10 load, so it's going to be much easier to get it done, start to get out of town before it really warms up, and I can get above the Mogollon Rim, which is the higher altitude north and east of Phoenix. I can get out of there. So that's the plan. And that delivers in Chicagoland on Wednesday. So this load is cool in that first of all, it's not too heavy. But also it's cool in that I can take my time, so I can save some fuel and hopefully make it a more profitable load. So real quick, I just wanted to mention the Yellow trucking bankruptcy. I think based on media reports, they're gonna file for bankruptcy on the 31st, and that kind of makes sense because then they can finish up the month, and it also gives them a little bit of time. They're actually trying to sell their 3PL business as we speak. I don't know if they have a buyer for that. But I wanted to talk quickly about who does the Yellow bankruptcy hurt. And when a company goes bankrupt, the first people you might think of are its creditors, and that's one group of people. The second group you would think of is the employees, right? So the employees are definitely, a lot of employees have already basically been told, don't bother coming in after Friday, after today, because Monday's the 31st. And I think some places have already kind of just wound down because they have a lot of facilities, of course. But the employees, and they have union employees, there's going to be some pain there, and those folks are going to try to find jobs other places. Hopefully they can get their pension money and get it reinvested into a qualified plan and retire at some point. But the interesting thing about who gets hurt by the Yellow bankruptcy when it comes to creditors is actually all of us, because Yellow got a $700 million COVID relief loan, and it's not been paid back. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, in terms of the federal government, $700 million is not a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. It's a couple bucks per person for everybody in the United States. So, that's probably, the government's probably just going to have to eat that. Now, they're going to be assets to sell because they have a lot of trucks, they have a lot of property. So there is some value there, but as a going concern, I think they're done for. The other group that's going to get hurt by their bankruptcy are their customers. Now, you might say, well, they're just going to go to other LTL companies. Well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind about that, right? Whenever a big carrier, and by the way, Yellow is in the top 10 largest carriers in the country in terms of trucks. When a carrier goes out of business, it means that the marketplace is less competitive for customers. Now, that's good if you're a truck driver, right? It's good if you're a trucking company. But the other thing that's gone on in LTL of late is lack of service generally. And what I mean by that is that when UPS Freight, who was a large player in LTL, became T-Force, the folks at TFI, the parent company, they said, hey, we're cutting the fat. We're not going to service places or customers that aren't profitable for us. So they cut out a lot of places that were not high volume, high margin places. So, it was kind of funny when that was going on, because like I would get loads when I was at GP Transco. I would be in a place that's like kind of off the beaten path, so to speak, like maybe like Bismarck, North Dakota or something. Or like one time I was up in I think outside of Grand, I can't, sorry, my mind went blank. Grand Forks, North Dakota, I think that's right. Like to the west of there. And, some smaller, like a small suburb of a small city. And, I picked up like 4 pallets, and that was the whole load, right? And they just ran it as truckload. And, when these carriers go out of business, right, if they're the only carrier or one of only two carriers that was servicing a place, it's kind of like an airline, right? Not everybody serves every place. And, so the Postal Service, for example, that does a lot of final mile, they can't pick up they're not going to be able to handle 3 pallets. Well, I guess they could, but I don't think they do handle 3 pallets. Now, maybe that's an opportunity for them, but the customers do get hurt. The market becomes less competitive. So there's a lot of pain to go around with Yellow going under. And for those of you who are anti-union, let me just disabuse you of the notion that the reason Yellow is going under is because they had to pay union workers so much more. That's false, okay? And I'll tell you why. UPS, the largest trucking company in America, is union. ABF is a union company. A lot of grocery store fleets are union. And the list goes on. And none of them are going out of business. In fact, UPS just got done doing their deal with the Teamsters. ABF reached an agreement with the Teamsters a few months back. They're not going out of business. They're going to pick up the slack, but they're not going out of business. It wasn't the union, right? Yellow's been around. Yellow Roadway, they've been around for a long time, okay? And they've always had a union. So, if you're inclined to blame the union, that's not going to work. And, other union places like automakers got bailouts from the government and paid it back with interest. And guess what? They're all union shops, right? So if you want to point a finger at anybody for Yellow going out of business, point it at Yellow management. Okay, it wasn't the rank and file workers; it was Yellow management. And candidly, it's like it would be no different than saying that the reason that USX had to get bought out by Knight Swift is because they got crappy drivers. Well, that's not true. They might have some crappy drivers, but the reason they had to get bought out and get saved was because of their management. So anyway, that's my take on this. I'm happy to discuss it, but this Yellow going out of business is going to hurt everybody in some way. Shipping costs are going to go up for consumers, for small businesses, and we are all on the hook for that loan, I guess. So I don't know if I'll ever see my $2, but don't ask a Yellow driver for $2. Oh, by the way, I do think there's an opportunity here. I've said this before. I really feel like Prime needs a terminal here in Southern Cal. And Yellow has a really quite nice facility right in, I think it's in, I guess it's considered Fontana, but it's nice. It's gated. I went by it this morning, actually. I think it's over off of Etowanda, between Europa and it's not Slauson. I can never remember the name of that street. Slover. So Slover runs right next to the 10. So Slover down to Europa, and then along Etowanda, I think it's where that Yellow terminal is. But it's complete. It's nice. It's pretty new. It's got a nice fence, got a gate, guardhouse. It would be a great terminal for Prime. Yeah. All right. And plus, the cool thing about it is there's a lot of people there that are going to need jobs. So a company like Prime could come in there and quickly make a proposal to the bankruptcy trustee and get that property, and probably be up and running within a couple of weeks, because you already have all those employees. You have mechanics, you have, because they had a sign they were looking for, they still had a sign hiring people, of course, but they got trailer mechanics, they got tractor mechanics, they got facilities. Could be a good move. You can buy it at kind of a discount, prefab. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Stay cool, by the way.